Hey, welcome back to You Make Terrain, where we help you learn the tips, tricks, the strategies behind how to build custom terrain so that your tables can have like this great environment when you're playing, either for your personal tables or maybe at a local game store, or if you're going to tournaments on a regular basis and you want to show off some better terrain than just MDF buildings everywhere. That's what that's what this channel is about, is we want to help show you how to find things that are pretty common, find, items that can be found locally, organically sometimes, or from local stores that you can put together and make something really great. Terrain piece that's, unique and important to your tables. Anyway, today we're going to talk about, I picked up, I just have the paper, this Exorcist from AOS, because what I wanted to do is I also had this kind of tube thing here that is really, it looks like a gigantic monument thing to me. It's really just a something that they use in sewing. Thread came on this. But I picked this up from somebody that was a local sewer, and I custom built my little Exorcist AOS guy. But what I did was, as you can see, is I put a high elf banner on them, and I switched the head out for a lion. The White Lion's chariot had these heads, these lion heads, and I switched the head out for that. And I just kind of made it something that I'm going to use together as a monument or a piece of terrain for my, for my old world table for my high elves. I play a lot of high elves and wood elf and high elf a good bit. So I wanted to make something unique for them that I could use as like a statue on top of this big plinth. And make it like a monument. And so that's what this one is about today. We're going to kind of go through how to do it and how to take a bunch of random stuff and make something really cool for your tabletop. Anyway, talk to you soon, and be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps me. And we'll take a jump into this project. Hey, I just wanted to kind of go into all the bits of this project that we'll be working on. I'll kind of describe each one as we do it, and then, give you a list of the things I'm using right here at the beginning, and then we can go from there and start doing the work. So first of all, of course, I have my cup of water because we're going to be using some glue and a brush, and I want to make sure that we have water available. I am using a 1/2-inch brush today that we're going to use to do most of the work. I am going to use this sand and walnut mix. If you can see that, I've kind of mixed like a rougher ballast sand and walnut, and the obligatory sprue cut up and put in there. And then the other textured stuff I'm going to use is I do have this plinth that's round. I'm going to use it on top of the other piece like that, so that it has some height and it looks like it's on a piece of cut marble piece. And then I have this piece of plastic card that is 3 mil thick, and I've cut it into a unique shape. And I also had some other plinth pieces here that just look like carved stonework, if you can kind of see that. And then this is broken up pieces of slate, like really small pieces of slate that I have that I'm going to use also in building this terrain. And of course, you know that we have this plinth that is really just something that held a big spool of thread for a sewer. And I put together this. I'm going to turn the light here just a little bit so you can see it a little bit better. But anyway, this is a Lord Exorcist from the Stormcast Eternals, but you know, from AOS, but I've kind of turned it into this lion-headed figure with a high elf banner that'll turn out really well. And then, of course, I want to put that to the side. Of course, I've got my tile with a paper towel that I'll use, and then I'm going to use 3 different types of glue today. This is a wood glue or a construction glue. That's that yellow wood glue. That's very good for like adhering the base materials down on the base. I have to use a little bit of super glue because gluing the figure to the plinth and the plinth to the top, I'll use super glue, which I'm just using Zap, but you know, any super glue will do. And then to attach the plinth, this thread spool onto the piece of PVC, I'm going to be using a wood adhesive. This is just by Loctite. It's just you'll see it when it comes out, but it's kind of a white, heavy-duty construction adhesive. And the reason I use this on something like this is I can be really precise about where I'm putting it, which is great. And it works really well, and I have a lot of control because of this lever action. You know, I can control how much of the glue is coming out, which I like a lot. Anyway, that's all the tools that we'll be using. Now let's get into how we're going to get this done. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to decide where to put this. I want to put it to one side like that, or like this. I think that side works better. I'm going to do it to one side like that just because I think it'll give it some pretty good looks. I'm going to use this construction adhesive, like I said, on the bottom here. And I am going to do a little bit here in the center, although I'm not sure the center touches, but I'd rather put a little bit than not have any. Okay. And this will take about 20 minutes to be kind of dry, and then a day to be really set well. But we can go ahead and keep working with the piece while that's drying, because it's not going to be, you know, like it's not going to move around a whole lot unless I really jostle it or something like that. All right, so I kind of cleaned up the edge so it wouldn't be too much of a mess. And then what I want to do is I definitely want to put these 4 pieces in and around this piece. I'm going to put 1 on this side and like 3 over here in a group. So I'm just going to take the smallest one here. I put a little bit of that construction adhesive on the back. And I'm just going to wiggle it in right there. And then I'm going to use the back of my brush here to just kind of, you know, wiggle away any excess glue. You can see that. And make sure it's good and in place. All right, and then I'm going to do the other 3. All right, so here we go. I don't need these to be in any particular order. I just want to kind of group them together so they look like they fell together, maybe off another piece or off this piece. All right. Here's the 3rd one. All right, and see that has some scroll work on it. If you can see that real well. That has that kind of chiseled look to it, so it looks like it's a piece of something. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this PVA glue, or the construction wood glue. It didn't come in this bottle. I found this bottle and felt like it was a good fit for what I needed. Now, typically when I'm doing terrain, I do not water this down. I'm going to wet the brush to start with, just so the brush is wet, but I'm not going to like water down the glue because I really need it to be sticky when I do this next part. And what I'm going to do is just put in a couple of sections here where I want the slate to be. I'm going to do it in 2 little sections, and maybe 1 over here on this far side. It's going to be harder to get the glue to adhere right there, but anyway. Always rinse your brush, and after you're finished with glue, as I've said many times before, definitely wash this with a little bit of soap and warm water, not hot water, but lukewarm, so that it won't be like stiff later because we left glue on it. So I'm just going to take some of these pieces of slate, stick them into this glue. And, hopefully this glue will stick to it. I might coat it one more time or brush around it with the glue, or even I'll show you another technique I've done before if you're really wanting to make sure it sticks around. All right, and then I'm just going to fill in some of these other areas. I selected how much slate I wanted. Stuck to my finger. Right at the get-go. I didn't want a whole lot, but I wanted some. All right, there we go. Now, because it's slate and it's just rock, you can just drop a little bit of this glue in between. This is the other technique I was alluding to. Like if you want to make sure it's really adhered and that it's not going to move around, you just kind of tap in between. You don't want tons of glue there, but you want some. Because this will dry a little bit yellow, it's not the end of the world. This will dry yellow. White PVA glue, like the Elmer's PVA glue, but there's lots of companies that make it. White PVA glue will generally dry clear, but the wood glue or the construction adhesive glue or liquid nails, that kind of thing, it's always going to dry a little bit yellow. So what you do is you drop it in between the rocks, and then if you have any that is definitely on the top, you can just kind of brush it off a little bit. But you're going to need to let this sit for probably about 20 minutes before all that's going to be like glued down into place and into the spot. Now, could I use this other adhesive to put the slate down with? You could. My problem is that it's such a big applicator that you're putting it down with. The millimeter size of the hole that it comes out of is gigantic compared to some of these little pieces of slate, and it makes it harder to get that. Now, you could put it on like your piece of tile and then use a knife or something small to just kind of like scrape it on there. That's totally worth doing. Sometimes depending on what you're trying to accomplish. So while that's drying, I want to go ahead and I'm going to take super glue, and I'm going to super glue this plinth, which is just a 3D printed plinth, with a design in marble. Oops, I dropped it. I'm going to glue it to the top of this first before I glue the miniature to it. And just going to stick that on there. And really, the big thing here is I want to make sure that I get it pretty even, but then, make sure it's stuck in place. There we go. That looks good. All right. So, pretty happy with that. Now I need to put the miniature in place. And I think, design-wise, I kind of want the figure like pointing that way or that way, not like this. I don't believe. I do want it, I think I want it facing that way. So I'm just going to put a little dot of super glue on the bottom of the figure's feet. And I'm going to stick that like this. All right. So there you go. I've gotten to that spot, and the next thing that I'll do is I'm going to put some of this sand on the figure, on the base here. I am going to use a little bit more of the wood adhesive or the yellow construction glue. And I'm going to wet my brush again. And I'm just going to work back in here now. Don't really want to jostle the the other things that I'd adhered down, but I definitely want to get around them pretty well. Just taking my time to, like I said, not really jostle it, but get it in there. Sometimes the surface of this plastic wants to be a little hydrophobic, meaning that the glue will kind of like break apart like it had an oil on it or something. If you run into that really bad, and you can kind of see it right here, there's a bald spot now. Some of that is just because I added a little bit of water to my brush. Making sure that you don't water it at all will make it okay and stick a little bit better. The other thing that'll help is if you just do matte finish on the surface or sand it really well before you clean it. You can always clean it before you start, with like a degreasing soap. And then you can also, oops, get that up. You could always wash it with the degreasing soap, and you can really see it happening over here. Or, like I said, you could sand it so that it's a really textured surface, and then the glue will stick a little bit better. And then the last thing you could do is you could always spray it with matte finish before you even start. All three of those techniques will help it not be, where it's trying to get away from the grease or make those little hydrophobic kind of spots on the piece. Oops. All right, I think I've covered it pretty well. I'm still having a little bit of problem with the hydrophobicness, but I didn't know I was going to get into it until I got here. Typically, I've washed my plastic, but for some reason, this one didn't get washed. My fault. All right, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take some of this sand and sprinkle it on here. I don't have to be really thick with this. And I need a good coverage, but I don't need to do heaps or anything. That's why I'm being careful about how much I put out. And then what we're going to do is once this is covered, I'm going to let it dry for about 20 minutes. And then we'll pull it up and do the next step, which is priming. Trying to show, and when we work on pieces like this, that granted it took me a little bit of time to source all of these materials, but we're not talking like days and days. I took about a half day, figured out some things that I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to make this piece like a trophy piece for the high elves, and it would make a cool piece of terrain for my army that I use all the time. So I had to do a little bit of sourcing just to make sure that I got everything, but once I did that, this should not take, I'm probably going to be done with this piece total work time, maybe an hour, maybe an hour and a half total, and I'm going to have a cool piece. Anyway, that's it for now. We'll pick back up once we go to priming so that you can see the next step. And then from there, we'll start painting it. Anyway, I hope that's helpful, and we'll pick up from there. Okay, I hope I'm recording this. I'm out here to primer this piece now. You can kind of see that it's all glued together. Some of that sand is still coming off, but the rest of it will be adhered when I prime it. The piece looks really good up on the top of that plinth. Everything's good. I'm using rattle can priming today. Granted, there's different ways to prime, but this seems the best for this situation. I got a lot of plastic here. Always keep your rattle cans at room temperature if possible. Don't put them in a place where they could get too cold or too hot. It messes with the paint. Always keep it in my hobby room, like in the closet when I'm not using it, so that it just keeps normal temperature. And before you prime, you need to shake the can pretty good. I usually do it for about a minute. Some people warm the cans, and I've seen that before too, like putting it in a hot water. If it got too cold and you were really worried that it was too cold outside, you might want to warm the can, but that's a little bit dicey to do. Anyway, I'm gonna prime this, and when you prime, you're gonna keep the can moving the whole time. You're never gonna stop, and then you're gonna change positions and do it from a different direction. And you'll see through the process, I'm just gonna move it, turn it upside down, turn it sideways, all sorts of things to make sure that I get a good coat on it. Let that sit for just a second, and then I'm gonna turn it. All right, that's looking pretty good. Now it's a nice warm day, so it's drying really fast. You do want to do this in sunlight if you can help it, outdoors if you can help it. You can use it indoors if you have good ventilation. Usually I've used a garage or a basement before with like a box fan or a vent fan running to get outside air in and out, inside air out, because you don't want these fumes to catch up with you. I do know several people that are allergic to what's in these cans, and they wear ventilation when they do it. That's not a bad policy if you can't be outside, is to wear some kind of protective breathing apparatus. And you just, like I said, you try to want to do this in sunlight if possible, or on a warm day if possible. Now I'm going to set it on its side so I can kind of get up underneath. All right, I'm going to let that dry, and then I'll get the other side. Because it's very hot today and very, direct sunlight, it's going fast with the drying. So that's looking pretty good. I'm just turning it around to make sure I got all the angles and everything. Yeah, that's looking all right. If I'm not careful, I'm going to get it on my hand there. All right, well, that should be that, and we'll go back in and start painting. Okay, so here we have the piece all together. Pretty good scale. Did really well on the priming. I'm going to get started on painting. I'll paint this column first. And I think I'm going for a stone kind of color. So we'll go with that, and then I'll do the base, and then we'll do the miniature last. Now I'm just going to use this game color. It is called something gray, cold gray. Just put a little bit out. I want the tower itself to kind of look like stone. So that's the color I'm going to use. I'm going to scoot this over just a little bit. I am going to dry brush, so I have my handy dandy dry brush out. Of course, I have my pot of water, but I doubt I'll use it. I have some extra paper towels. Load up this brush, and I'm just going to go, and this has a nice texture on. You'll see it as I start to paint. It's okay if this first bit is a little bit splotchy because it'll even out over time. Try to keep it with doing circles. Plus, having it a little splotchy will make it look a little bit more stone-like. Different areas have different colors on them. based upon wear and weather and things like that. I'm actually going to try to hit these big stone pieces so they look similar. All right, so now I'm going to be a little bit more purposeful here. Really kind of try to get into the stonework up the top with a pretty heavy coat of the stonework, because when I go back on the miniature, I'm going to do something very different for the technique there, but I want this top to look like it is really stone. All right, it's looking good for the first coat. Like I said, it's a little splotchy, but that's okay. I want to mix this other stone gray in with the first color. It's a little bit on the green side, but I think these two colors together will actually look really good. This will be my second coat of dry brush. I add a little bit more of the gray. Mix that up. Yeah, that's the color I'm looking for. That looks very good. All right. Now I'm gonna load up my brush. And I'm gonna do the circles again. Trying to make sure I get these stones down here at the bottom, but not so hard that I'm going to knock them off. All right, digging that color good. No, it doesn't look like much right this second, but it will in just a few minutes once I finish my techniques on this terrain. Now I'm getting it on the miniature itself, and I will clean that up, you know, when I start doing the other technique on the miniature. I think that's looking pretty good. All right, now what I'm going to do is I have a wash here, my secret weapon that I like a lot. It's called concrete, and I think it is going to be perfect for this situation. Just going to put a little bit out on my tile here. Use a different brush and wet it just a bit. Added just a little bit of water, and I'm going to start putting that wash everywhere so that it looks a little bit more like concrete or stone. Really getting it in everywhere I can, and then deal with any runs starting from the top down. Helps you to catch all the runs and things like that that might pop up. All right. Looks like I'm gonna need a little bit more washout. That is definitely the look I'm going for. I'm gonna let this dry and then come back and do, probably take about 10-15 minutes for this to dry. Once this dries, I'll do another coat of the stone gray dry brush back on top of this. There we go. That's what it looks like. And I think that's the technique I wanted to do. Awesome. Because I had 15 syllables to that. All right, catch you in just a second. Okay, while the tower itself is drying, I'm going to start to work on this brown, the terrain piece over here. Just going to use a couple of different browns. This brush here, just wet my brush a little bit. I'm going to need this to be just a little thinner. I've chosen this kind of brown because I really want it to stand out from the actual tower itself, and I thought that a kind of orangey brown would be a good way, didn't have all my lights on, sorry about that, to make that concrete kind of pop. So I'm putting this on pretty wet. This will be a tricky negotiation over here. Looks like I'll have to do touch-up no matter what I do. Easier to touch up the concrete than it is the dirt. Just about finished here with this base color. And then once we get this in, we will, of course, let this dry and get back to the concrete. And then we'll do other techniques on this brown. After we have everything done with the concrete. Oh, that's a mess over there. All right, so there we go. That's the base coat of brown in, and I'll come back with some lighter coats on top of that. Go wash out my brush and clean up my piece of tile. Okay, the base is drying here, and we're going to work on this column with the stone and dry brush. And so I'm going to go back. The color that I'm actually using is, from Vallejo, but it's a stone gray out of the Flames of War pack. But it's Vallejo paint for stone gray. And I'm just going to put a little bit out. Once again, I'm going to use a dry brush. And let's just take a look at that for a second here and kind of see how it looks. The bottom's already done with it pretty well, but I need to do all of this section. I don't think I'm going to mess with the bottom too much because I like the way it looks. But I'm just going to lightly dry brush in a circle to pull out the colors and the texture that I'm looking for. Just try to make it as even as possible. And you can see how that's turning out, but I feel pretty good about the way that's turning out. You can really see that texture, which is what I was looking for. And then the base is not quite adhered to where it needs to be. Well, as I said earlier, I'm doing this all in one day, and that glue needs time to really adhere. So that looks pretty good, but I still need to put just a little bit more of the stone gray right on the top on this base piece. And I'm not going to worry, like I said, so much about getting it on the miniature, because I am going to paint a different technique altogether on it. But I want this stone to look right. And then it's going to be a game of, can I, paint the other piece without messing up the stone look? That's just going to have to work that way. Yeah, I'm really digging how that's looking. And I think I'm really happy with this. I'm just going to take a look at it. I think that looks a lot like stone, and I'm very happy with that. It really has that mottled look of what stone would look like. And I think I'm going to add just a highlight of bleach bone. Bleach bone is a little dark. I'm going to mix it up a little bit better. Let's see. Yeah, that's a little bit better. I actually think it might be too dark for what I'm looking for, but I can find out really fast. Let's see here. No, that'll do what I wanted to do. Just to lighten it up slightly. Like I said, I want these kind of splotchy looks to it here and there. Like it's got wear on it. Now, this base is really well done now. It's nice and dry. What I'm going to do is I'm going to work back in with a yellow, which needs to be mixed up better. That one's a royal mess. All right, let me shake this up a little bit better. This is like buckstone out of the Reaper line. It's kind of a pale yellow. I just want to work over this dry brush on this other color. Onto this terrain. Oh no, one of my rocks came out. Not the end of the world. Just needed, because I'm rushing it, if I had let this dry overnight, it would have done a whole lot better, but I was trying to do it all in one day for you guys, just to kind of show you. Could be done in one day. But we can also fix any of these pieces with super glue in just a minute. so that it won't look too bad. But I'll get the glue, I'll get the paint in first, and then we'll glue back what needs to be glued back. All right, so that's my second thing, and then I'm going to look for all right, and so my last little bit of dry brushing here is this off-white. I need another paper towel. I'm sorry, the table's shaking a little bit. All right, I'm going to do the off-white into the stone and the base and the tower all at the same time. And then I'll glue back in the spots of rock that have come loose. Right, just a little bit more of the off-white for the tower itself and the stone. The piece up here. And then we'll move on to the actual figure. All the pieces of terrain come off because I needed more time to adhere. All right, that looks very good. Just making sure that any of these darker spots of white kind of get brushed out. So that it doesn't look too odd, but looks like I said, a normal wear pattern on the tower. Yeah, it's looking good. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. Definitely looks like stone. And let me fix this base up with the rocks. I'm going to use super glue because we're trying to make this kind of adhere in a spot that already has glue and sand on it. And that is a little tough. All right. Let's see here. I think this piece goes back in there. Oh, I see. This piece went here. Perfecto. This little rock there. All right. It's looking a lot better. Now what I'm going to do, just touch up any of those rocks that maybe didn't get the full treatment with a little bit. I must have had a rock move from here. feel like that one's just going to come back off. All right, I'm going to take a look at it one more time. The only thing I see is that because I've moved a couple of things around, there's some white spots that I really need to touch up with this brown that I started with. So I'm going to water this down just a little bit. It was a little too much. It's always difficult to work back into a piece once you've dry brushed. But this needs to be done so it doesn't look funny later. Just all these little white dots here and there.
That's it.
And what I'll do is I'll end up putting flocking there, or some sort of flock or static grass in those spots so that it'll look a little bit more natural. All right, that should be it. What I'm going to do now is clean up my water, clean up my mess that I just made, wash some brushes, and put everything away that we don't need so that we can get back to painting the miniature.